Hey everybody, welcome back to Hindsight versus Foresight. It's been a minute, but I've been going through some stuff. You know, I've been trying to fight for what I believe in regards to the government today. I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings that people don't agree with, thoughts that people don't agree with. And I've come to a point in my life where I feel like I need to say what I believe in and what I don't believe in. And I have not necessarily gotten a lot of support from the people around me. And that's okay. This video is mostly for my children and anybody else that is questioning whether they should fight for what they believe in. Because when you fight for what you believe in, sometimes negative things happen, and you have to make that choice for yourself. Sometimes when you fight for what you believe in, it comes at the cost of relationships. It comes at the cost of your mental health. It comes at the cost of your safety, depending on what it is. And you need to decide for yourself whether it is worth it to fight for what you believe in. And if you don't fight for what you believe in, you have to come to terms that you're going to have to live with that. And, the decision is not wrong either way, right? But deep down inside, you're going to know whether you should have or should not have. And I think about Jesus. Jesus knew his destiny. He knew what was going to happen to him. Mary knew what was going to happen to him. I can only imagine what it was like holding her baby, knowing exactly what was going to happen. And Jesus did what he was going to do, knowing what was going to happen. And he had to choose. And it was hard because, he was tempted in a lot of different ways. The devil offered him everything, if he would just turn his back on God. And he didn't, knowing he was going to get crucified. And people like Martin Luther King, he had a mission. He believed in something, even though he didn't see, the end result of it, right? He saw some of it, but not all of it. He wanted something better for his people. And he had a dream. And he knew that a lot of hate was going to come his way. And that a lot of people in his family were saying probably, settle down, like you're causing waves and we don't need that. And we have enough, hard times, as it is. But inside himself, he had to say, this is worth it, no matter what happens to me. And I've been struggling with that because, sometimes fighting for what you believe in comes at a big cost to you. Sometimes the hate is targeted to you, is directed to you. Sometimes your life is in danger, because of it. And sometimes even your family's life is in danger, and you have to make that choice. And I'm sure, along the way, there were many times where he questioned himself when things got bad. Jesus had to go off and pray on his own for a while to get centered. It is not easy trying to make a change. It is not easy standing up for what you believe in. Sometimes you find yourself all alone, with nobody believing in you and what you believe in. But at the end of the day, you have to be okay when you lay your head down on that pillow. When you are ready to die on your deathbed, you want to say, I did the right thing. And that doesn't mean that it's bad if you don't do it, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to choose for yourself. There's always going to be somebody fighting for that cause. It doesn't have to be you. But if it is you and you lose something, you have to be prepared for that. And sometimes the cause that you're fighting for is worth it for the generations to come. And I've had some struggles, I'm not going to lie. I've lost relationships. I've had people treat me differently for my views. But in my eyes, I feel like things are not right. And I have to do what I have to do. And, death threats and negative comments and all of the things, have made me doubt myself sometimes. But deep down inside of my heart and my spirit, I know that what I'm saying is correct. And there may come a time where I won't even know the results of it, right? I may not be here. But I want my children, my grandchildren, my nieces, my nephews, their children to know that their aunt stood up for what she believed in, even if they don't believe in it. I want them to know that you can fight for what you believe in this world. That you don't have to just stay in the sidelines and just watch it all happen. That you're going to doubt yourself. That you're going to want to give up many times. But if you stick it through, good things can happen. I'm saved because of Jesus. Because of what he's done for me, for what he's done for everybody. And a lot of positive things come from someone standing up for what they believe in. And I'm okay with that. There may come a time where I'm just done with it, right? I don't know. It's really rough. But I do have to fine-tune my approach. I know that. And that happens because when you start fighting, you don't really know what's the best way to go about things. But then you just fine-tune it, change it, depending on the culture and the time and, what is best. Sometimes an approach that is more violent or more provocative is best. Sometimes you have to approach it with love and caring and acceptance. Every situation is different. But at the end of the day, you're going to be the one on the deathbed, not everybody else. You're going to have to face yourself and face God at the pearly gates and say that you did what you thought was best, that you fought for what you believed in. And I just want you to know that it is usually not the most popular point of view. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you and your family. And it's okay, either way. I'd rather fight for what I believe in than not at this point. Even if it messes with my mental health, even if it's scary, even if I walk around scared. Because my life is at the tail end of it, right? I'm 52. I'm not 20-something. I'm not afraid to lose anything, But I do want to make sure that the world that I leave behind is the best for my children, my grandchildren, my niece, nephew, their children. So I'll do whatever it is I have to do. Because that is what love does. If Jesus had gotten scared and walked away from the cross, where would we be now? He had to go through all of the lashings and the strikes and the crown full of thorns and the vinegar sponge stuffed in his mouth and stabbings in the stomach and hanging there in the heat, that Middle East heat. And he had to stand there with two thieves next to him. And he even went through a phase where he was like, why did you forsake me, God? Because, it was tough. You tend to believe, like, am I right? Like, this should be better. I'm fighting for what's right. And I'm suffering. But at the end of the day, he accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. And I can't wait to meet him one day. And that gives me strength. So, at the end of the day, you have to make a decision as to what's important for you to fight for. Some things you can just manage. Some things you can overlook. But there are some times when you have to focus. You have to focus in and hone in on certain things that need to change. You may win, you may not. But the important thing is that you fight for what you believe in, no matter what. Think about it. God bless.